tonight to go over the wrap up of what was finished a little less than 2 weeks ago, the Missouri legislative session. Though there's a lot more going on in the House than the Senate the last week as far as actual anything being passed. But so wanted to introduce myself, and we can go on, just start out with a few of the norms and things like that first. First of all, please stay on mute when you're not talking. And just as a matter of, if you are on video, I know someone's joined by phone, show your face if at all possible. I understand, like, you don't have to, but we'd love to see it, and that makes it, especially if you're talking, that makes the conversation go better. Welcome, Senator May is here. Welcome, Senator. And please.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Please use the chat if you got questions. So just the basic agreements: be thoughtful about your personal power and privilege. You do wait. Why am I talking? Why am I not talking? So think about, how much space you're taking up or not taking up. Notice and take responsibility when your actions or behavior are different than you intended, or impact others differently than you intended. Use I statements if it gets heated. Let people know people have disagreements on things. I don't know if we'll have disagreements, but it's possible. We all have different perspectives and places we're coming from life. So practice active listening. Listen to understand, not to respond. Call folks in. Tell people what you think, not attacking. Minimize use of jargon, which I try to always remember acronyms. Explain your acronyms first. The DNR is the Department of Natural Resources. It's DNR. Explain terms when you speak, and if people ask, then explain it. What's learned here leaves here. What's said here stays here. Well, we are recording this, so that's not completely true, but we also, one mic at a time, one people talk at a time. When it's time to have everybody interact, then raise your hand to interact, and we can go on from here. If there's any questions about this kind of thing, raise your hand or ask in the chat. And so what we're asking now is, tell us who you are in the chat, put your name, where you're joining us for, and who your state representative and state senator is. If you are your own state senator or state representative, you can let us know. And also, I said this earlier, if you are a state representative, state senator, or a candidate, and you are in a rush and can't stay the whole time, let me know, and I'll let you speak earlier. My plan right now is for me to go over what the Sierra Club has been doing, and then have the legislators get a chance to, I'll introduce the legislators and people who are running for office right now, and then give you a chance to say your perspective and what you think has been going on, and what's happened in the legislative session. So I want to make sure everybody who's graciously given their time, who's elected official, gets a chance to speak. So let me know if you have to leave early, if you're senator or representative, and I'll let you in. So we can go on from there. And again, Ashton will be monitoring. If you have questions, do not hesitate to ask while I'm speaking. I think that's good. And you can you can raise your hand and we'll have the discussion. So basically the team right here, this is a picture of myself when I had hair, and it's a picture of Ashton when she had a pumpkin on her head. So neither of those are actually the case right now, but that's fine. I like pumpkins, I like hair, but everything changes. This is sort of a neat vision of the Sierra Club, and it just included in this. Want to keep it in because we had this before, but this kind of sums up the goals of the Sierra Club, and so that people understand that the goal of the Sierra Club is to protect, enjoy, and explore the planet Earth. So we are the largest grassroots environmental organization in the country. Appreciate everybody being here, and I think we can go on from here. So to give an introduction to what's going on in the legislature. The state of Missouri is dominated by Republicans in the legislature. So we have 24 Republicans and right now technically 9 Democrats, but it's really 10 Democrats. Senator Razor resigned his seat with just 2 weeks left in the session in order to join the tax commission for the state of Missouri. And in the House, there's 111 Republicans and 51 Democrats. Although in some ways that's 52 Democrats because there will almost assuredly be a Democrat elected to replace Rasheen Aldridge, who resigned to enter the St. Louis Board of Aldermen in 2023. So this is a breakdown. You actually have since it takes 2/3 of the vote to override a veto, we have enough Republicans, if they stay united, to override a veto. Especially in the Senate, that's a big if, as people saw this year. But it's also in some ways irrelevant, and because the governor is also Republican in Mike Parson. And I saw Senator May says she has a radio commitment, so I want to give an opportunity before we begin to allow Senator May, who's my senator, to address and speak. I do appreciate you joining us, Senator.
No problem. I just want to say that we ended the session, I think, on a victory. I am so grateful to the senators that I work with, Senator McQuarrie, Doug Beck. It's 9 of us. We had an awesome, phenomenal leader in Senator Rizzo, Lauren Arthur, Angela Mosby, and also Barbara Washington from the other side, Brian Williams, Steve Roberts. It was just 9 of us, and we were able to successfully end the session with making sure that IP reform was dead. And so, it's not really IP reform. I hate to call it that. It's a deception. IP deception was dead. And so I think that's one of our greatest victories this session. Most of the legislation I focused on was mental health. I can just, run down a little of that for you. We were able to add the firefighters and all first responders to the critical incident management that we set up in the public safety department last year. We added them to it. It's a mental health thing that allows them to do mental health checks every 2 to 5 years without being penalized. We're setting up group mental health conversations and things of that nature. So we did that. We were also able to add, not only that, we added, we added the literacy programs for school. I'm going to try to pull up everything that I've done, but it's hard to remember some of it. But but that's one of the mental health things that we focused on doing there. We add literacy. It's other stuff, but like I said, we can definitely look it up. We championed that. It was some of the bills that we had that I added. We did the suicide prevention, student ID cards, had to list the phone number for the crisis text line for suicide prevention. I was able to get that bill added on to a bill. And so we got that across the finish line for suicide. Last year, we added mental health to the already health curriculum that the schools teach. So we want to continue down that line to give our students all the tools to combat mental health. So those are some of the things we focused on. The elementary literacy fund, we're able to, it provides grants to school districts and charter schools for home reading programs. We were able to get that across the finish line. So it's other things, but I mean, I can take questions up to my radio show starts about 7:15. So it takes me about 5 minutes to get there. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take it. But I'm just happy that we were able to defeat some of the things, and I'm excited about the initiative petition for abortion. I think it's going to go on the November ballot. I'm excited that we have an opportunity to get back women's rights, and it's long overdue. And I just want to say, I don't care what people's beliefs are, I think we do care about life, but I think this is not the way to go about it without any exceptions to rape and incest. We have to think about those young girls and things like that. So it's my hope that we're able to get this passed for in November. I'll be doing everything I can to move the needle in that direction. So with that, I'll just turn it back over to you, Michael, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to everyone this evening.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Senator. Appreciate you speaking. Yeah, we will get to that, Senator, as she pointed out, an issue very important. Sierra Club was part of a big victory in stopping potential ballot question to undermine our initiative petition campaigns. And we'll get to that soon. And we'll get to other legislators after the presentation. Want to make sure the senator had a chance because she could, she's going to have to leave soon. So Ashton, if you could go back to the slide presentation. Let's see. Thank you. Thank you. So we're pointing out, so there's a Republican majority in the House, Senate, and at the House, Senate, and in the governor's mansion. So yeah, we can go on. One to go over. So I monitor very closely, and we look at what affects the environment. So that's the tool we have, is that, like, there's so many bills filed. We are concentrating the Sierra Club in certain bills that affect environmental protection and energy consumption and those kind of issues. So just want to sort of go down some of the things we've been looking at, and then we can discuss what's going on. So first, some bills that have passed. We can go on. There was a real victory, which is unusual, things that I have not seen happen in a long time. We actually passed a bill, even though there are very few bills passed this year, to give more protections for water, because the Denali Corporation has been dumping toxic sludge, mostly from meatpacking plants and factory farms, a lot of it from out of state, from Arkansas, into communities in McDonald County, which is the very southwest part of the state, and Randolph County in central Missouri, north central Missouri. And the smells, the health damage, and the damage to crops from the sludge that was spread on farms that the Denali Corporation said would help fertilize farms. It did to some, and it killed crops in others because there was no uniformity of quality. There was a loophole where they would give away fertilizer, and they'd say it's fertilizer. So the Fertilizer Control Board controlled the selling of fertilizer, but it wasn't sold, it was given away. So there was a they didn't have jurisdiction, and then it wasn't considered solid waste. So because of that loophole, it didn't really fall under the jurisdiction of either Department of Natural Resources or the Fertilizer Control Board. And Denali was able to dump their toxic sludge, and there was a bill passed to add protections so that there was actually testing and monitoring of the sludge. The protections are not as strong as we would have liked, and the Missouri Coalition Environment, especially Melissa Vatterott and Jalith Virgin Downey, were very instrumental in working with legislators in the affected areas. Republican legislators, Ed Lewis, Dirk Deaton, Representatives Ed Lewis and Dirk Deaton, and then Senators Mike Moon and Joe Carter. We worked with them, and we're able to get this passed, and that's a real victory. And again, any questions on any of these, just raise your hands, and Ashton will be monitoring to let you speak. But let's go on to another bill that passed. This is a bill we don't like. The regulatory sandbox, after 3 years, finally passed. It allows businesses to apply for and receive exemptions from rules and regulations. This bill was written by the American Legislative Exchange Council. So that's the group that was founded by the Koch brothers, who got their money from the fossil fuel industries. And this is part of the whole campaign saying there's too many regulations. This allows you to apply through a new agency to have case-by-case exemption to Missouri regulations. And the Sierra Club has been lobbying against this for 3 years. And through the lobbying and working with the bill sponsor in the House, who I don't like his bill, but the Representative Alex Riley has been, at a personal level, someone who has been honest with us, and we could talk to him and work with him. And through talking to him, we made the bill not as bad. And through pressuring and testifying year after year, we still don't like the idea. But what passed because of the work of the Sierra Club, you now have explicitly on this incoming law, it's explicitly stated that you can't waive a regulation if it will undermine environmental protections. There's now greater amount of time that agencies have to examine whether or not the rules can be safely waived. And it was originally written so that granting this waiver automatically granted a waiver from national laws and rules, which is kind of crazy in our opinion and could undermine the delegated authority of the Department of Natural Resources if it's involved the Department of Natural Resources to enforce the environmental laws of the United States of America. And all those things were changed. And so the regulatory sandbox we have now is significantly not as bad as the way it was written originally about 3 years ago by the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC. I just put the baby there because I think of a regulatory sandbox. We just put the baby in the sandbox. So that's what that illustration means, because the regulatory sandbox is kind of boring and babies are cute. So I think we can, and again, you can either ask questions later, or if you got questions about this now, let me know. Yes, Alec, Mr. Hisson.
Alex, yeah. I was just curious if there was, if it was known like what the main driver behind this bill was. I know it came from Alec from like national level, but for the Missouri reps that were sponsoring it, did they say any particular uses that they were needing this for?
Yes. So, and some of them are very disturbing, and we'll get to them later. Throughout the years, specifically, sometimes they talk about startups and rules, and so something that kind of makes sense is that some like startup businesses, so a lot of the financial disclosure rules are complicated, and unless you are already a rich company, it's hard to do that. So our response is, well, then how about the agency just helps people navigate the system? But okay, if that's not good enough, then it should be narrowly applied to just financial rules. But so there's this. There's also Senator Denny Hoskins, who was the sponsor in the Senate. He mentioned in 2023 that this could help Bitcoin mining, which we despise, come to the state more easily. And so that's a red flag for us. That was specifically mentioned. So those are the things that were mentioned, startups. And as far as like the startups and financial rules, we suggested narrowly apply this to financial rules. Also, it's a prestige thing. The only other state to have a regulatory sandbox for every agency is Utah. And it's just a matter, I guess, sort of a right-wing aversion to rules and regulations at all. So if you get a total sandbox, then you've like a better right-winger, or better like hater of rules. And like, of course, I think a sane response to rules and regulations is if they're unnecessary, don't have them. But if it's needed, you should have them. And that everybody should obey them equally. And this undermines that, which is because it undermines it, we want to get more and more protections, and we got some of the protections we wanted. Does that answer your question some?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, excellent, excellent, very good. So if there's any more questions about the regulatory sandbox or this beautiful baby, I have to admit, I've met many babies. I don't know which baby that is, but it's a good baby. So we'll go on to what we mostly work on, which is trying to stop bad bills. And again, it's impressive that we had that good bill about Denali. So let's go on looking at some of the other issues we're looking at. And again, a lot of these, we work really hard. A lot of the senators here and representatives worked hard. A lot of these things, you can't say which is which failed because the Republican Party fell apart itself and started fighting with each other. So there's a giant utility bill, which I, like after we discuss this, Senator McCreary, actually, after we discuss this, I'll let Senator McCreary talk about this some, but 'cause she's been doing excellent work as far as really monitoring utility bills. It's a very difficult thing to do and protecting both the consumers and the environment. But I put right here, House Bill 1746 is sort of a throw together thing. There was several bills which they could have thrown all the utility stuff onto that ended up what they congealed around. But there were several things we were worried about in that bill. The most worrisome for us, as far as environmental, is what they called the watt for watt provision, which mandated that if a utility closes a power plant and takes power offline for electricity production, that they have to have already in place, watt for watt, the same amount or more energy already online or ready to go online. And this is a really crazy way to look at the world. I mean, it's already mandated that you have to make sure there is abundant energy for reasonable prices for everybody in the state. But to mandate that you can never do with less discounts the energy efficiency standards and energy efficiency improvements that you can make, conservation techniques for people to work together to use less, advances in battery storage, and just the possibility, which I mentioned a couple times in committee, and I testified on this. Henry Robertson, who's on this call, also testified on this bill. The possibility that, let's say you had population decline, or something happened, like say an aluminum smelter went offline, which actually did happen, to mandate that you have to have the same or more amount of energy no matter the circumstances is just not good for anybody. So that was something we were really concerned about, what they put in the bill. It sets up a utility methane program to gather and distribute methane runoff from that goes in the air from factory farms, basically from feces lagoons from factory farms and from landfills. And we don't like this because it encourages more methane production. It encourages animal management that produces more methane, and landfill management that produces more methane. And most importantly, it's just it's used mostly as a greenwashing technique for both the methane gas industry, and methane gas is one of the largest drivers of climate change, and also for the factory farm industry, which has so many environmental problems as far as affecting water and affecting the air. And the landfill gas and the CAFO, factory farm gas, is never going to replace even a tiny fraction of fracked gas, but it can make big fancy advertisements saying we are renewable and we're saving the earth for both of those industries. So those are why we oppose those provisions of this bill. Especially we're worried about the watt for watt, and want to see have her speak later. But since this is something that Senator McCreary worked very hard on, if you have any thoughts on this, Senator McCreary.
Well, I have lots of thoughts. I'm honored to work alongside Michael Berg in the state capitol. I feel like we, became partners in the Capitol many years ago because I sort of randomly, as a House member, got assigned to be on the Utilities Committee, where we deal with things that are energy related, but I also have served on all the different agriculture committees through the years. So if you think about a lot of these bills that we're talking about this evening, often they are things that come through because they're related to the monopoly utilities, or it's related to something dealing with agriculture. So I sometimes think if I ever write an autobiography, I will entitle it The Accidental Environmentalist, because I didn't set out to be an environmentalist, but it's sort of just like I have to, because it's the right thing to do. And I'm in the rooms where it happens and I have to speak up. So I do want to also remind folks why we'll spend a lot of time tonight talking about bad bills that died. That is ultimately when folks like us are in the minority. And I'm not even talking about the Democratic versus Republican makeup. I'm just talking about in the building, if you care about exploring, enjoying, and protecting the environment, often people like us are in the minority in that building. So one of the things that we do on your behalf, all of you that are joining us, is that we play a lot of defense. And so, we often don't get to wave banners and say, yay, we set a record for a 50-hour filibuster. We don't often get those glamorous things, but if you think about even a filibuster for 50 hours to stop initiative petition reform or to stop that deception, so much of our success in the state capitol is playing defense. So a lot of what Michael's talking about tonight is spot on. It's an important partnership in that building where we have to find folks to partner with to help stop bad things from making it to the governor's desk.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Well said. And this bill, and just so that you know, and we can get back to the slideshow, Ashton, so that like what this is with the utility bills. Ameren, which for those of you in St. Louis and much of the rest of the state also is your utility, they have 41 lobbyists, registered lobbyists at the Capitol. So they are working very hard to put their position, which is not always the best thing for their ratepayers or the environment. And so, they provide us energy, but we have to watch out that they don't, influence things too hard for just their benefit at the expense of the rest of us. So we can go on to the next bill unless there's any other questions or thoughts on this, and we'll get back talking about.
I want to say one more thing about that watt for watt bill. The gist behind it is Senator Cindy O'Laughlin, who is the majority floor leader in the state Senate. I've talked to her about this multiple times. That watt for watt portion is her bill. She basically wants to make sure that people always have power when they go to switch on the switch, or, even like that they have gas or water when they need it, that kind of thing. So generally, I don't think she came up with this language necessarily. I feel like she had a concept and it kind of just got hijacked a little bit. Because I think what was lost in the discussion about this watt for watt mandate is that the state of Missouri doesn't function as an island as it relates to energy generation. We are part of the state of Missouri is part of 2 different regional transmission organizations. So we work in partnership with states around us, and there are a lot of complex moving parts to that. And I certainly, I don't want to see Missouri pass laws dealing with investor-owned utilities as if we're on an island, because we are not. And I think ultimately those kinds of policies would be bad for the environment, but also bad for all of us that, pay our bills every month.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Senator. Yeah, we are not an island. We can use regional transmission to our benefit and not mandate just a very rigid, you must have the same or more no matter what. So I think we can go on to the next bill, which was our top priority for the year. And the Sierra Club worked very hard and had excellent testimony to what they call the Waters of the State bill. So I think it was, the summer of 2023, there was a Supreme Court ruling, the Sackett decision, in which America's hydrologist in chief, Justice Samuel Alito, decided that there was the definition of waters of the United States was too broad, and that much of what was previously considered waters of the United States and therefore under the jurisdiction of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, was no longer under the EPA's jurisdiction. It's considered a crazy decision, but in response, a lot of groups that the industries that potentially pollute or do pollute have pushed over the years. And so environmental law in Missouri, for the most part, is at the federal minimum. So water protection law is at the federal minimum. Air protection law is at the federal minimum. And as of 2022, hazardous waste law, which is a terrible, like one of the worst defeats we've had as far as legislation in the last few years, they reduced the definition of hazardous waste to the federal minimum. So there were forces who decided, if the definition of waters of the United States is lower, we have to make the definition of waters of the state lower also, so that the Department of Natural Resources has less jurisdiction over the waters of the state. So you had one group, one person who's associated with different factory farm interests who was pushing this bill, and it would have redefined the definition of waters of the state. Therefore, the waters in which the state has jurisdiction to enforce environmental law by making it so that most wetlands were not protected, and also just underwater streams would only be considered water to the state if they were relatively permanent, whatever that means. And so intermittent streams would not be covered. Then you have to determine what is and is not intermittent. And it also said that under reservoirs or water underground would only be considered waters of the state if it had a connection to the surface. And so then you'd have to decide how big the opening has to be. It would have been a mess, but we testified in the Senate, had a lot of people, a lot of groups, John Madras, who worked for the DNR for years, and just had excellent testimony for the Sierra Club against this bill. Many other groups, conservation groups, water, I think MSD, the Missouri Metropolitan Sewer District, testified against, but like a lot of sewer districts, a lot of water companies were opposed because like wetlands are natural filters to have higher quality drinking water. So we stopped this cold, and even though we were able to stop it early in February and it didn't go anywhere since, it was a real danger. You had representatives of the Cattlemen's Association who were in the Capitol every day pushing. You had some very powerful interests pushing this, and really concerted, unified effort by many people and groups in Missouri, small farmer groups, and you have large agricultural industry likes the idea of having less water protections, but a lot of small farmers, this is devastating. The pollution of your neighbor can pollute the water you need for your plants and for your animals. So groups representing family farmers testified against this bill, and we were able to push back, and it didn't rear up again. It looked like they were going to do a compromise, and then just offers a compromise, just some of it. But any of this doesn't make any sense. I mean, right now, all waters that flows from property to property is waters of the state. So if you have a puddle or small pond in your property, that's not waters of the state. But if it flows to another property, it is waters of the state. If it goes through public areas, it's waters of the state. And that is the proper definition of waters of the state. We've had this for 50 years, and we should keep having it. So that's a real victory, and something that we saw as top priority and made top priority, and just put a lot of effort into stopping. So I think unless there's questions, we can go on. So yeah, this is something that all the senators can talk about later. Everybody's in the legislature. The initiative petition, we were working with a lot of other groups to protect the initiative petition system that we have in place right now. For the Sierra Club, initiative petitions brought some great things. We have a renewable energy standard, which was actually written by Henry Robertson, largely written, who's on this call, which was great, that passed in 2008. We have our parks and soil tax because of initiative petition. We cannot, and I think this is a wonderful thing, you cannot have cost of work in progress in Missouri. Utilities cannot charge you in advance for energy that hasn't been built yet. To build things such as a new nuclear plant, put the risk on ratepayers instead of on investors. You can't do that because of initiative petitions. It served environmental issues and other issues well. And so basically the bill that was congealed along would give certain legislative districts, HJR 74. Thank you, Claire. HJR 74 would have allowed people in some congressional districts to basically veto the collective vote of the people if they're using initiative petition process to try to change the Constitution. And the Democrats in the Senate, I think, correctly said, you can have a vote on this, that will allow the people to have a vote on it, but it has to be honest language that tells them accurately what they're voting on. Some Republicans wanted to put what they call ballot candy, or what people call ballot candy, I think accurately, which has language about not allowing people who aren't citizens to vote. And then people will see that. That's their hope, is people will see that and then not look at the substance of what's of what the bill is mainly about, which is to undo one person, one vote as far as initiative petitions. So this had, after I think 51-hour filibuster by Senate Democrats, did a great job. They were able to stop this from passing with ballot candy. So that's yeah. If someone wants to, let's see, someone's at my door. I don't understand that, but
Let me,
yeah,
if you want to go check the door,
Yes.
I'll just say, so
Yes.
one of the reasons this is so important to not just the Sierra Club, but countless partner organizations from every nook and cranny of Missouri, one of the reasons this is so important is over the last few decades, I think partially when term limits kicked in, quite honestly, is elected officials no longer respond to what people want. And so what happens is, and I'll just talk about Medicaid expansion. So expanding healthcare to working folks, healthcare that's affordable and accessible. For year after year after year, people went to the Capitol and begged their elected officials to expand Medicaid. The legislature could have done it with a piece of legislation, and we could have been pulling money in and been able to take care of our neighbors. Instead, the politicians refused to respond to people. And after several years of that, citizens took it into their own hands and they went the initiative petition way, collecting hundreds of thousands of signatures in order to get it to the ballot, and the voters approved it. The reason we can't make it harder to amend the Constitution is because then it consolidates all the power with politicians, because then there's no way for regular Missourians to have an impact on what laws govern their lives. So I would say, and I said it on the Senate floor, if politicians would just start being more responsive to their constituents, citizens wouldn't feel the need to go to the ballot box on these things. Great example of that. We're going to have sports betting on the ballot this November. That should have been something that got passed years ago through the legislative process, but there was one person that was holding it up. And so people are like, well, we're just going to have to go directly to the Constitution. So it's an important tool that we preserve.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate you doing that. I found out it was at the door. It's someone just soliciting for something. But Alex, you had a question?
I had a question for Senator McCreary, which was, I believe part of this was also affecting the statute initiative petition and doing a little bit of reform there, along with, kind of really screwing up the constitutional aspect of things. Has there been any appetite or any conversation, anyone pushing for just the statute initiative petition reform to try to protect that, so we wouldn't have to go to the Constitution every time?
Well, and that has been part of the discussion. As Michael shared too, there were over 20 bills filed, and it was a lot of different mix and matching of different ideas. One of the things that we've talked about as elected officials is, what about some kind of a cooling off period? So say regular Missourians, like all of you guys, collect signatures, get something put into statute. And then politicians in Jeff City should either be forced to by law, or maybe just because we're statespeople, we should agree to leave that alone for 5-10 years and just see how things work. And then, if elected officials could show that they had some restraint and that they wouldn't immediately go and undo something that was put into statute, I think that we would see a lot less things going into the Constitution. But, just in my lifetime here in Missouri, there was a statutory change put in regarding banning puppy mills. And that was a statutory change, not constitutional. And I'll be damned, within, the next year, the legislature came back and undid the will of the people. So, that in a way, the legislature has created this system.
Exactly. If people had to do over again, they would have made that a constitutional amendment. Thank you, Senator. I think unless there's other questions about this was of the central part of what all the press and everything was talking about during the legislative session. Very important to the Sierra Club too, and we're very grateful to the Democratic senators for having stopped that. Yes, Landon, you got a quick question?
For the IP, was this Ed Lewis's bill?
I don't know. if
The
it was-
one that we debated on the Senate floor was, it was actually SJR 74, Senate Joint Resolution
Okay.
74, and it was Senator Mary Coleman's bill.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Good to know. Thank you.
But they rolled a bunch of them together. So if you look at it
Okay.
online, it's SJR 74 plus like 6 other numbers after that.
Okay, cool.
Oh,
Okay.
I put an HGR 74. Sorry, that is a mistake on my part. So I was kidding that y'all were gonna have to remember the numbers, but I got one of them wrong. But all right, let's go on. So I got these numbers right. So this is something that didn't get as much attention. Bitcoin mining protections failed by much more than it did last year. Last year, these things came very close to going into law. So basically, for those of you who don't mind or who don't know about it, we'll take you down a little bit of a rabbit hole. There is a group called the Satoshi Action Fund, which represents Bitcoin miners, and they invested like about $80 million nationwide into trying to pass bills to make it easier to set up Bitcoin mines and to make it harder for local governments and state government to protect their citizens from Bitcoin mines. So just quickly, what is a Bitcoin mine? It is a gigantic, they've got a picture right here, often gigantic operations of computers humming all the time to solve puzzles in order to obtain released new Bitcoin. Bitcoin makes you solve a puzzle to get new Bitcoin, and the puzzles increasingly get more and more complex. And so you have to have more and more computing power to do the Bitcoin mining. And just to give you a sense, there was more energy used last year for Bitcoin mining than the energy is used by the entire country of Pakistan, which has 250 million people. Or to give a wealthy example, the entire countries of Argentina and Sweden combined, it's just an insane amount of energy to be used to create a concept of currency not under control by a government. So the Sierra Club doesn't have a position on whether or not cryptocurrency is a good or bad thing. You can get your own opinions, but other cryptocurrencies don't use massive amounts of energy. To give you a sense, Bitcoin mining uses more energy than the entire rest of the financial sector combined, even though it's a fraction of 1% of all transactions are through Bitcoins. And so we're worried about the energy use, the e-waste, and the massive amount of noise that comes from this. These bills would have stopped or made it much more difficult for local governments to put in noise ordinances. They would have made it so that the Public Service Commission could not accurately look at the amount of damage and potentiality of just leaving operations quickly and leaving other ratepayers to pick up the bill for upgrades needed for Bitcoin mining operations. And so they could not set special rates the way they can in other states. So this would handcuff the Public Service Commission ability to protect consumers. It would handcuff the ability of local governments to protect their constituents from noise pollution and too much energy, and also just too much stress on the electrical grid. We were in the fight, letting legislators know often how bad this was, testified against all the bills, and it didn't pass on any bill, even in the House, even though it's really not hard to pass things to the House if Republicans support it. So there might have been some Republican opposition, talked to Republicans and Democrats, and these bills were stopped, despite the fact that Satoshi Action Fund had hired 9 lobbyists, kind of out of nowhere. So we can go on to the next issue. So this is an issue, what is often, yes, Representative Dahl, that was a great piece that was on CBS News Sunday morning. It's very dangerous. Here's an issue I call attacks on responsible investing in state contracting, because you can also call it anti-ESG investing, but they were trying to make ESG a boogeyman. So basically, there are bills that contradict each other that would ban pensions and public contracts from using environmental social governance criteria. And of course, the Sierra Club's most worried about the environmental criteria. Then some of the bills which were listed as the same things would force the state government to use environmental social governance criteria, but only force them in order to attack things that the Republican Party sees as bad. So some of these bills would say that the state cannot invest in companies that do boycotts in support of trans rights, are in support of environmental protection, or are in opposition to climate change, are in support of abortion rights. This was in bills. So one side of the mouth, people are saying we cannot use any of these criteria because the criterias take away from maximum profit levels and the lowest price, the highest quality and lowest price for contracts. And the other side of the mouth saying we have to put the criteria we care about because it's our money and our investments. I will tell you, I've testified, I think, 11 times in the last 3 years against these bills. I have not heard a single coherent argument for them, for why they help anybody. In Senate Bill 898 in the House, they had a provision saying that pension funds, public pension funds cannot use any environmental social governance criteria for investing decision, which, it's saying it has to maximize profit, but it's also sort of, I mean, for example, if you're a teachers union and you don't want to invest in a voucher program, seems like you should be allowed to not have to invest in companies that are undermining what you see as what your profession should be. I mean, I think that's fair, but the same bill, they added an amendment to the bill saying that no pension funds can invest in any hostile foreign nation. Okay, so our foreign enemies, which is okay. I don't, maybe that makes sense to have that criteria, but that is a governance criteria. So that is the same bill was both banning ESG investments and mandating certain ESG investments. So it was contradictory of itself. The whole thing was a manufactured crisis pushed behind the scenes by folks like the billionaire Leo Leonard and con artists like Vivek Ramaswamy, who ran for president until almost everybody who saw him decided they didn't like him. But he wrote a book, Woke Inc., and started a non-woke investment firm. It's all a con, but behind the scenes, it's not really funny because its push is to make it harder to transition to cleaner energies. And bills like this have really badly affected states such as Texas, which cannot invest in firms like BlackRock and other firms that they say are doing too much to try to make sure the planet doesn't burn, to try to confront climate change. And for example, Texas, because of certain financial firms they can't invest in, municipalities have estimated to have lost over $1 billion because they just can't get the same amount of rates when they release local bonds, municipal bonds. So it's badly affected Texas, and it may have already, none of these bills have passed, but former treasurer, now auditor, Fitzpatrick, in late 2022, he pulled all Mosers, are the Missouri, the public pension fund for Missouri. He pulled it out of BlackRock because he claimed that BlackRock did a tiny thing to encourage Exxon to produce a little bit more renewable energy and less petroleum. Exxon denies that they did even a small amount to do anything to protect the planet from heating up. But they pulled it out, and now we've got an investment with the local St. Louis firm, which actually charges higher fees, and it's not clear whether they have higher returns. So the whole argument's a mess. When on the floor of the Senate, when it was being argued for, Senator Rick Bratton actually did not understand the bill he was talking about, but made a speech, which was a straight QAnon speech, using all the different words that they use for QAnon, like the breadcrumbs and this kind of thing. So, and then was claiming that using ESG criteria for pensions is the same as the Chinese system of social scorings for individuals, which it's not even close to the same thing. So this was a manufactured issue that I have not seen a single person who supported who understood what it was about. And all of those provisions, they were on bills and we were fighting them and we were keeping track like a hawk, but they all died at the end of the session. So yeah, we can go on unless there's questions. It's a weird issue. All right, and then this got a lot of attention. If you drove down any highways, you probably saw some of the billboards pushed by Bayer. There was Roundup, Bayer Corporation, which bought Monsanto, is losing a lot of lawsuits because people are claiming and juries are siding with them that they've got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma because of use of Roundup, and that the labeling on Roundup did not warn them of the health hazards. And so Bayer decided they were going to try to push it to, because, you know, the lawsuits are in Missouri because Bayer bought up Monsanto, so their American headquarters are based in Missouri, and they don't want to lose these lawsuits and pay this out anymore. So they were trying to ban these duty to warn lawsuits. The trial attorneys opposed this. We opposed it too, but trial attorneys, the MATA, Missouri Association of Trial Attorneys, was big pushing back against these bills, and they ended up kind of dying. They had billboards all over. They had a real PR blitz. They probably spent millions of dollars trying to push people. And what I think is, you know, this is not something that I have a huge specialty on, but I think it's kind of funny is that one of their argument was that, well, if we can't use Roundup, then we'll be reliant on foreign corporations to supply our pesticides. But want to let you in a secret that Bayer is a German company. So when we're using Roundup, we're already reliant upon a foreign company producing our pesticides. And also a part of that argument is like, if people are damaged by paraquat, which I think is mostly produced in China, like you can sue them too. If it's like, this is a bill does not specify which country is the base country where these things are based. So this bill failed. I'm not going to take huge amount of credit. What do you call it? The trial attorneys did a lot. You know, Representative Adrian Plank gave a lot of really heartfelt opposition and testimony against this bill, which we appreciate. So that's another bill that failed. So we can go on. Yes, Landon, real quick.
Oh, I just had a question. How exactly did this bill protect Bayer? Like, what is the duty to warn exactly?
Okay, so basically, if there is a risk that is not on the label, then you can sue and say that the manufacturer of a product had a duty to warn. They did not warn, and we were hard. And through tort law, you can gain compensatory money for your suffering. And people have been winning these lawsuits.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's
Okay,
really
cool.
thank you.
Thank you.
And Landon, the way it was written, though, it would apply to anything, you know, so that's what was so concerning about this language is it would apply to even chemicals and things that haven't even been invented yet, you know, down the road. It was very, it had far reaching implications.
Okay. That's good to know. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. It's about 7:27. So I'm going to real quick go through a couple more things, and then we'll open up, let the candidates and representatives, and if there's any senators, they'll let Trace McCreary speak, but she's been speaking, which is great. Just want to talk about some good bills that have died. And this is the big one, and this is a real shame. There was a bill to restore public representation, the Clean Water Commission. In 2016, a amendment was snuck into a bill without any hearings that undid years and years of mandated public representation, people who represented public interest on the Clean Water Commission. The Clean Water Commission oversees enforcement of water law in Missouri. And these bills, Senate Bill 1419 and House Bill 2853, would have changed that. Senate Bill 1419 was sponsored by Senator Doug Beck. House Bill 2853 by Representative Paul Brown, both of whom are Democrats, who we've worked very closely with. 67 people testified on House Bill 2853. Zero people testified against, but behind the scenes, again, factory farm, CAFO interest pushed to kill this behind the scenes, despite not having the guts to testify in person against. So I think that if it's a 67 to no vote, and it's very reasonable, because just one more thing about that, in 2019, a bill was passed to take away the right of people to use their county government and their county health departments to protect themselves from factory farm waste, setbacks, odor ordinances, setbacks from bodies of water, setbacks from other properties in order to control CAFO so they don't not causing harm to residents. And this was passed. Only Republicans voted for this, even though it was all Republican-run counties that they were taking away the rights from. And so bit by bit, the ability to actually protect ourselves and our water has been eroded. You can't protect it at the county level. I mean, the thing with Denali that we talked about before, probably McDonald County would have taken care of the problem on their own had the attack on local control not been taken away on these kind of things in 2019. So that was a real bad bill a good bill that did not pass. And I think we'll go on again, but I think I want to first of all introduce and then open the floor to folks who are on this call who are both candidates and elected officials. We have Aaron Crosley on the call, a representative from the Kansas City area, and he can talk soon. Just want to introduce first. And then we have Representative Joe Dahl from the St. Louis area. And we have Tracy McCurry, who's been talking, the senator from the St. Louis area. And we have Representative Doug Mann, representative from the Columbia area. We also have candidates running, Democratic candidates running for state house. Alex Hissong running in District 102, which is placed there. We have Ben Murray, who's running for state representative in District 80 in the city of St. Louis. And we have Mr. Joe Peerless, who is running for state senate in Southwest St. Louis County. Please, someone chime in if I've missed you and you're running for something. Very good. Thank you all for being here. And I want to first open up the floor to I'll go one by one, the representatives on the call. Aaron, if you've got some words to say or any thoughts about, oh yeah, before we go on, got the 100% club that's up right now. Senators and representatives who voted with us 100% of the time in the last 4 years. And just to note, a lot of these votes are tricky. Just because someone's missed a vote here and there doesn't mean that they're terrible. There's a lot going on in districts. It is good that we have this so that we can track people who really are with us on all the votes, but there's a lot more to just your voting. And also, as far as senators, we appreciate every Democratic senator is on this list. That's because in the last 2 years, there's only been 3 votes that we could even track in the Senate, which is a testament. Like in the Senate, the less votes that come up, generally the better, because the votes are not as important as actually just stopping things from coming up to vote in the first place. So that's we have the 100% club there, and want to give a chance for first Aaron, if you've got something to say or any thoughts about the presentation.
Sure. Well, thank you again. I'm Aaron Crossley. I represent part of Independence in the House. So I'm here in District 29. I have the sound of chainsaws around me because we had some pretty wild storms come through over the weekend, and every tree company in the region, I think, is in my neighborhood right now. I'm also having a moment of panic. I see my phone's at 5%, so I will make it quick. Thank you for all the work that you've done. I know that several of your members came down to the Capitol this year to advocate for different issues. And I think, thinking about all the important work that you did too, I really center around a lot of what we fight down in Jeff City now is not even these different policies, but it's just our basic human rights, our rights to exist, our rights to make our voices heard. So thank you for your work on stopping the so-called initiative petition reform. Really, it's the Politician Empowerment Act, as it takes power away from people and gives it back to politicians, which I don't think most people are clamoring for. So, when I think about all of the issues that I ran to get elected for, every day. It really just feels like we're standing up for basic human rights and our voices. So thank you for the work that you've played in that. And with that, I'm going to get off for my phone dice.
Appreciate that, Representative. Appreciate you being part of this call and participating and learning about these issues. Want to give a chance for Representative Dahl to speak and to add your thoughts about what went on. Right, she might be busy elsewhere. I know.
There she
Okay.
is.
There she
Yep,
is. Very
now we
good.
can hear you.
Sorry about that. You'd think by now I could figure out the Zoom. I am Representative Dahl. I represent House District 91, which is in St. Louis County, which is Webster Groves, Rock Hill, a little piece of Afton. And I have an incredibly environmentally conscious district. So it's a really pleasure to represent them. And I think, you know, keeping our environment safe for our future generations is incredibly important. And I will just say that when you come into the House, I'm a physical therapist by background. So when you hear Senator McCreary talking about utilities or other things, Bitcoin mining was new to me. You only know what you know. And I will say I am so grateful to Michael Berg and to the Sierra Club volunteers for always being there, not only to tell us where the Sierra Club stands, but also explain why. I think a lot of times when people want to persuade your vote, they just say you should be against this, and there's no real reason. So I really appreciate being able to have that support. It's incredibly helpful.
Thank you, Representative. Appreciate that. Appreciate you being here and the work you've been doing in the legislature.
Absolutely.
Very good. And Representative Mann, I think, has not spoken yet. Want to get your thoughts on the session and these issues.
Yeah. So Representative Doug Mann, I represent District 50, which is the southern portion of the city of Columbia. I also want to echo thank you to Michael for all of his work. There's a lot of people that will come into my office like once or twice and just say, hey, we want you to do this thing, and then I never see them again or hear from them again. Michael is constantly texting us to let us know updates on things, and also being very responsive if a bill comes up that I am curious about, like, you know, implications of, or I don't fully understand. He is very responsive in helping me understand things as a civil rights attorney and former teacher. Some of the more scientific aspects of all of this kind of go over my head. So having that support is very important. It's no secret that this year was not very productive in the legislature. We hit some record filibuster time, record low number of policy bills. But I think that, you know, people are starting to see that dysfunction and are getting a little bit tired of that dysfunction. Hopefully in November, we see some positive results. I very much expect that we're going to see some positive results, and that will make some positive changes within the legislature. But I also want to thank everyone that is on this call, all of the volunteers that come down to the House, emailing us, etc. It is difficult down there from time to time. It can be very draining, but knowing that we have people in the communities across the state that support us and see and appreciate the work that we do really helps keep us going. So thank you to Michael, and thank you for everyone on this call.
Yeah, thank you, Representative. Appreciate all the work you've been doing, and just the issue that you brought up is sort of like how hard it is to be a legislator, because Representative Mann has been very, very accomplished to be a civil rights attorney and a teacher, but being a civil rights attorney and a teacher does not train you to understand utility law, our hydrology, our issues of pensions. Like, they have to weigh in on every subject matter that there is, and that's not easy. And that's why it's important for, you know, to rely on people you trust to look things up for you, because it's impossible for any one person to understand really well everything on earth. I mean, Ben Franklin tried, but like there's not a lot of Ben Franklins. You know, and there's more stuff to understand than there was in the 18th century. So very good. Thank you. And want to also give a chance for people running for office. So I know Is Ben, are you, Ben, if you want to talk about your run for state
Yeah.
representative?
Hi, I'm Ben Murray. I'm a candidate in the city of St. Louis in the 80th district. That's the district that Peter Meredith is terming out from. And like I said, I was the legislative assistant for Representatives LaDonna Applebaum and Barbara Pfeiffer. Michael, and maybe you're getting back to more issues. One thing that I want to talk about, because it's something that you and I worked on, that I've just sort of kept my eye on, because we were fighting against it when it was just first heard in committee, and it finally got sent to the governor this year, was Jim Murphy's EV charger bill. That started off as a very, very bad bill that would make it hard for localities to mandate EV chargers for vehicles. The language that actually got passed, I mean, I don't want to overstate it. It was way pared back, and frankly, probably not unreasonable. He got to say that he passed something, but so I felt like that was a win, and I was glad to be a small part of it.
Yeah, and I can tell the story. It just left something out as far as that. So the original bill, St. Louis County passed a ordinance saying that new construction, new businesses, when they were putting in new parking lots, had to have a certain percentage of parking spaces that were EV charging station ready, as well as a small number of EV charging stations. There's a lot of different ideas about how much that would cost. And a lot of people, there were, I don't know how many, some people opposed it. And this was all going through at the same time that people were mad at County Executive Page because of COVID issues that were unrelated, but that sort of anger all congealed. And so you had Representative Jim Murphy pushing this bill, which would say that if you have an ordinance about EV charging stations, then it would have to, that the jurisdiction would have to pay for it themselves, which is, of course, mandates and building codes. You can't have it so that the jurisdiction has to pay for it. And so our argument was, EV charging stations are good. This specific rule in St. Louis County, maybe it should be adjusted, but that's a business for the county. We don't want the state coming in and banning counties from doing productive environmental bills. And they also would have banned the whole state the way it was originally written. You have an EV charging station mandate in the city of St. Louis that not a single person that I know of has complained about. And it would just have affected the city of St. Louis too, to take away local control, which is, that's the central issue, which is talked about that before, a central issue is they've taken away local control for banning plastic bags in the state of Missouri. They've taken away local control for setting a new minimum wage in the state of Missouri. They took away local control for controlling factory farm waste. They took away local control recently for making policy on new methane gas hookups, which we opposed in 2021, and they passed, which was pushed based on things happening in California by the Gas Institute, not based on a single campaign that was happening in Missouri, preemptively by an industry. So what ended up happening is the way it was written, this is the third year they've been doing this. The way it was written originally, it would have not only done that, but would have banned school districts. And Jim Murphy, I don't know, at the testimony, he seemed surprised. I brought that up. It would have been basically, if a school district would have had a policy to try to green their bus fleet and to use more electric vehicles and make sure that they had the charging stations so they could have the electric buses, it would have banned them from doing it. He seemed to, I don't know who wrote his bill, because he seemed to be surprised. So I'm glad I brought that up, because the bill that came out of that committee ended up not having it. The only people who came to testify for the bill year after year was a person who ran a church who claimed that, and maybe correctly, I don't know the details, but he claimed that it was just too financially burdensome for his church, and they really need to repave their blacktop, but they just did not have the funds to put in the charging stations. So what ended up passing just said that the ordinance could not be used for nonprofits and churches. And we consider that like, okay, you still keep the essence of what's going on. And this man who maybe has a legitimate project, I would still prefer that this would be countered at the local level instead of like mandating another, attack on local control. But as it was written, Jim Murphy seemed satisfied. He was the only one who was really pushing it. Senator Ben Brown was also pushing it, but it was really Jim Murphy who really cared a lot. And so that's what passed. And I didn't include it because we seemed to that as neither a major defeat nor really a victory, because it's not great that it passed. It's just like it was kind of diffused, and what could have been a real bad precedence was sort of a compromise that I don't think anybody was super happy with, but it was not a terrible thing. So I hope that explains that pretty well. Yeah, thank you, Ben. I'm glad you brought that up, and want to give a chance for Mr. Peerless, who's running for Senate, to get a chance to speak.
Michael, Mr. Peerless was my father. It's Joe.
Oh,
Um,
Joe. Yes.
I am running for the Missouri State Senate. This is Andrew Koenig's open seat. I am running unopposed in the primary and would love to be able to join Tracy in another 50-hour filibuster next year, rather than sending her texts giving her support from St. Louis when she and the other Democratic colleagues were helping save democracy in the state of Missouri. This is my first run for political office, and we're doing everything we can to flip this seat. We've been knocking on doors for 5 weeks, and Tracy and I are going to be knocking on doors in a couple weeks and raising a lot of money, because the Republicans know that when we flip 15, we have a good shot at breaking the supermajority. It's not a gimme, but we can't break the supermajority unless we flip 15, and that's our goal. And I look forward to being able to work with the Sierra Club next year and getting a lot of knowledge to keep me informed as to issues that I should be paying attention to.
Yes. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Mr. Peerless, for being the father to Joe. And also want to give a chance for Alex to who's also running for state representative to address the group.
Hello, my name is Alex. I am running for state rep in 102, which is West St. Charles County. It is all of the rural St. Charles. So when you think of St. Charles, typically you're thinking of near St. Louis. My district has a lot of great parks and trails, Lewis and Clark, August Bush Conservation, also Weldon site, and I have some land up in Lincoln County that I've been working on restoring for a couple years. So conservation's always been a big part of my life, and a big reason why I'm running, along with just getting involved in the community. I've never attended any Sierra Club meetings or anything like that before. I've kind of been for the Mid-Missouri out in Columbia. I think I signed up for their newsletter and talked with them for a while. But this is really cool. Thank you for the information and the education. And if you've ever walked into a space of strangers and felt like, hey, I found my people, that is the feeling that I had tonight. So I will definitely be participating more.
Excellent. Appreciate that, Alex. And I just saw Senator Doug Beck just joined the call, and I don't know whether you caught it. We just were explaining the kind of compromise that you helped foster on the EV charging station bill. If you would like to talk to the group, Senator, we'd love to hear from you.
Sure, absolutely. And sorry I'm late. I was at actually a fundraiser for Maggie Nurnberg, and so we had a labor fundraiser for her today. No, that bill, I heard you explaining the vast majority of it, and that's kind of the way it worked out. I was basically tired of dealing with it every year, but it was a compromise on a bunch of other things, other bad things that we got off. And I don't want to tell you all what those are, but there's quite a few things that would have been detrimental. And we narrowed it down. They didn't want to do it, but we narrowed it down just so the nonprofits wouldn't have to abide by the law or whatever. So I still think the county version should look like the city version, and we probably wouldn't have as many issues with the 2 to 10 and all the other stuff, minutia of the bill. But at the end of the day, we did that, but we also got land banks and some other things that were a hard push that the Republicans did not want us to do, which I think will be really good for a lot of our communities and as we go forward. So, but yeah, that was, it is what it is. But as you know, Michael, Jim Murphy's been pushing that year after year, and we killed it every time, and probably could have killed it. We were going to kill it again. We wouldn't have got the other stuff. So
yeah, when I saw that, that I just saw that and kind of shrugged. Like, okay, this seems like a compromise we can live with. It's not great, but it's a compromise we can live with. That's why I never contact you. It's like, okay, I get why you did it.
And I'm with you, as you know, I don't like stepping on local control either. And that was my biggest thing. But I thought if we're going to do that, this is the least impactful, thing that we can do. So we did that at the end. And I don't know what other items you talked about this year, but
We talked earlier, we had a whole presentation on the utility bills, about the Bitcoin mining, of course, the IP, the filibuster you were part of. And I think we're gonna make the slideshow and things accessible. We talked about let's see, the Clean Water Commission, unfortunately, your bill, which unfortunately was killed behind the scenes. That was great to restore public representation, the Clean Water Commission, some of the bizarre anti-ESG bills, and of course the proposal to weaken the definition of waters of the state that we fought back against early. So that's the center of what we've been talking about.
yeah, and I think that
Well,
water bill can
We
actually.
need to give a big thank you to Senator Doug Beck. Thanks for joining us, Senator Beck. Senator Beck was really helpful over the last few years at helping us get that regulatory sandbox bill into a state where it was a lot less harmful to the environment. And Senator Beck, in my opinion, took the lead on that. He worked really closely with the environmental group. So I just want to say thank you to Senator Beck.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Senator. This was a 3-year-long process, and you really in committee made sure, because I worked out a deal with Alex Riley and then worked with Senator Beck to make sure that you had parity in the House and the Senate. So whatever version passed, it was what we had agreed upon would function. And Senator Beck was the lead on that in the Senate, and it was because of him that it went through. And again, it's one of those things, I wish there wasn't a regulatory sandbox, but the Sierra Club has fought to make sure that if you're going to have a regulatory sandbox, it is not nearly as dangerous as the way it was originally written was extraordinarily dangerous. I don't know if it was written to allow people to harm the environment, but it could easily have been used that way. We'll see if it even functions now that it's going to be a reality, or if it's just going to be some sort of dead weight. But I don't know. I don't think that ultimately was stoppable in the long run. So do appreciate it. Thank you for bringing that, Senator McCreary. You've been talking some of this time. Did you have any other thoughts or? No?
Well, I've talked plenty. I just want to say thank you to all the elected officials that joined us this evening. The Sierra Club couldn't be as effective in your state capital without the electeds that are on this call. But also, just as importantly, I want to thank everybody who has stepped forward and is running for office. We have term limits in the state of Missouri, so it doesn't matter if we have a superstar somewhere. We've got to always be looking out for that next legislator superstar. So thank you to everybody for being courageous enough to put your name forward and work really hard this year.
Yeah. Yeah, appreciate that, Senator. And so we're trying to have this done by 8 o'clock. So we've got a few minutes. So if there's any sort of questions, thoughts, contact me if you want to join our legislative committee. Make sure. So just, yeah, we go back to the lobbying efforts, a couple back. We had people in district meetings. We talked to state senators, state representatives, had a lobby day in the Capitol that went off very well, where we talked about some of the issues on the call with legislator, talked about the water bill, about the IP, the initiative petition, and the Bitcoin issues. We have an action warrant. We have testimonies. Want to thank Peter Schneeberger is on this call, who testified against some of these worst responsible investing, these so-called anti-ESG bills, which were just, as I pointed out before, were just all of them dumb on their face. But if you trust me, just because it's dumb doesn't mean it's not going to pass. You have to push back at things that are dangerous. A few minutes. If there's any, yes, Alex.
I wondered if the Sierra Club Missouri had any position yet on, although the initiative petition stuff didn't make it through, I believe there is going to be a ballot item this year prohibiting ranked choice voting at the municipal levels, and it does have some of the ballot candy in there as well, and I forget what else it actually did.
Yes, we have to. Thank you, Representative Dahl, is hopping off. So, part of our policy on democracy, the Sierra Club opposed that bill and opposes it. But we have not voted on whether to put any efforts at the ballot box. As far as the initiative, the TACO initiative petition was far more dangerous than what actually made the ballot. I think none of the Democrats like that, which got on the ballot too, but they, I think, probably correctly saved their capital for attacking the more dangerous of these anti-democracy bills. We don't think that the state should prohibit local governments from being able to set their own system. If they want ranked choice voting, they should be able to do ranked choice voting. But it's not nearly as important an issue to us as the initiative petition. Yes, exactly. Senators have to pick their battles. So that got through, but we don't like it, and also don't like that it has the deceptive language. But yes, Landon.
Yeah, that petition also, it bans vote counting machines, so it's exclusive paper ballot. So probably will make elections slower. Sorry, I don't mean to interject. I did a thing for a class about it, so I was excited.
No,
I'm not
thank
excited
you.
with the bill.
I knew there was one other aspect of it I was forgetting. Thank you.
Yeah. So that'll probably make elections slower and
Well,
less accurate.
Let's be clear. It doesn't. It also says if they're approved mechanical machines, they will be okay. So it doesn't ban.
Yeah, that's true.
Doesn't ban it.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator. I know that Peter Schneeberger, he's got his hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Michael. We are thanking our legislators, but our lobbyist is also critical. And you've done fantastic work for us. And I greatly appreciate everything you've done for Sierra Club Missouri chapter.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, and appreciate your work this year too. Coming down on moment's notice, and doing great testimony. So yeah, appreciate that, Peter. So excellent. Any other thoughts on any of these issues? Are the legislative work? Go out, support good candidates, and you can join our legislative committee. We're in the process of making endorsements right now for the upcoming election. Yeah, contact us if you want to get involved and look at what's going on in your legislature. Open it up again for any last thoughts, and then if there aren't, we will close it again. We appreciate again all the legislators on the call, and especially Senators Beck and McCreary. It really was impressive, that 51-hour filibuster. And again, it was Senator Beck who was pushing the whole attempt to restore public representation to the Clean Water Commission and made sure that we got the needed changes to the regulatory sandbox. And Senator McCreary has been just a rock solid looking at utility issues, understanding utility issues, and making sure that especially the monopoly utilities, or all the utilities, don't harm the environment and harm consumers for their own benefit. Very good. Okay, well then we will, yes.
Mike. Oh.
Yes, Carolyn, you want to say something?
Okay, yeah, really quick. I just wanted to say thank you, Michael. You have been our legislative director, lobbyist, contact hero for the Sierra Club for many, many years. I've been around for all those years, and this is, I mean, this summary that you've put together here in this webinar discussion is just almost a pinnacle of your hard work. I mean, all the people at volunteers, candidates, current representatives and senators. Thank you so much. You've led our interests and our little community. I think one of the persons said, who's running in St. Charles, Alex said, he's found his people. Well, you kept us people together and working together. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Carolyn. And for those who don't know, I can say the same and 50 times more for all the work Carolyn's been doing for decades and decades to protect our environment in the state of Missouri. So Carolyn Pufalt is
Oh,
one of my favorite people on earth. So I appreciate everything you're doing.
this is about you, Michael.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Very good. So any other thoughts before we head out? Oh, okay. Excellent. Appreciate all of you for joining us, and get involved and make sure we've got good legislators. And when we do, good or bad, push all the legislators to do the right thing.
Yep, exactly.
Very good. Bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody. Nice
Bye.
seeing you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Great
Thank
job,
you.
Michael.